Okay, well, once again, good evening and nice to have you all here. Feel free to ask any questions. Sometimes when there's a big crowd of people are reluctant to, ask anything, thinking that people might think that's a silly question or whatever it is and laugh at it. But it doesn't matter, whatever it is, ask a question, because the whole purpose is to help you and see where we can clear up things, because this is not like our normal engineering, mathematically based subjects, which are cut and dry. You just follow the steps and you end up with the answer. This is a open-ended subject. You can interpret it in one way, he can interpret it in another way. And generally, when I correct, I try to give recognition to, as long as you have a good argument for what you are saying. It may not be exactly what the book says, but if you can have a good justification for your argument, fine. And language, yes, we like to write decent English, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people think in the vernacular and try to translate it into English. So if you have to sometimes think back. If you convert it to Sinhalese, so I don't know Tamil, but if I convert to Sinhalese, I try to talk back, then it makes sense. So as long as you have a good explanation for what you are writing, for the question, for the answers that you provide. Okay, so let's go on. I will just very briefly touch on the subject of ethics, and then we will look at the engineering institutions, other engineering institutions. But what I'm going to do is I'm first going to take the IESL code of ethics and do that, because that is what is more important right now, right? And then come back to the code of ethics of other engineering institutions. That maybe I have got about 4 or 5, but maybe we'll take about 3 of them. And then this time I've introduced some case studies, because we don't realize, but a lot of the major engineering disasters that have taken place globally have been due to unethical situations. And that is, people find it hard to believe that some developed country has done something which is not, ethically correct. But a lot of these have happened, including some very well-known accidents, which are engineering accidents which should never have taken place if things had been done correctly. So what is ethics? I'm asking, but it's already there. So, but ethics is based very simply. Ethics is the knowledge of dealing with what is right and what is wrong. If you do the right thing, that's good ethics. If you do the wrong thing, it's bad. But all of us, being human, we have a little devil and an angel in our brain, right? And the angel will tell you, oh, that's the right thing. That's what you should do. You don't create problems. But the little devil might say, oh, that's boring. This is the fun thing to do, right? Why don't we do it this way? So, being human, we can make a judgment, and you have to decide on what the best way of handling the situation is. Ideally, you should be doing things ethically, the correct way, and as far as possible avoid doing things the wrong way. And ethics is something that it's nothing new. You may think ethics is new because we are starting to learn this for your IESL Part B paper. Ethics is something that from your childhood, your parents, when you are small, when you are taught, they tell you this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing. Don't be naughty. Listen to what we are told. Obedience. From your childhood, you are told this. Then you go to school. There a little more discipline is brought in. Right nowadays, you can't back a child, but then there is more. The concept of right and wrong is emphasized. And then in Sri Lanka, because of our culture, practically every child, or I would say most children, would go to some sort of religious instructions. You go to the Daham Pasal or Sunday school, the equivalent of the Hindu or the Islamic religious instructions, so that you get in your formative years, you get a good grounding of the concepts of right and wrong. If you disagree with that, I don't know, you can tell me, but that is how it is. So that ethics is nothing new. When you come, it's not something that you just start learning because you have to sit for the B paper. It's something that it should be in your system from your childhood. So, why do we have a code? Why do we say organization? I skipped a lot of basic theory to why do. But why do you have a code of ethics? Why does IESL have a code of ethics? Why do engineers have a code of ethics? Or doctors or any profession? Because the code of ethics will define acceptable behavior, accepted and accepted. That's the correct thing. What's the correct way to do something? Right? It promotes high standards of practice. Because as an engineer, you are, especially the IESL code of ethics, when we go into that, your main focus is to safeguard the welfare of the people, the community. So, if you, and as engineers, we all our design work revolves around standards. And whatever work we do, there are standards. And if we start fudging those standards, we'll end up with buildings that might collapse or bridges that might fail or some machinery that might disintegrate and kill somebody. So good high standards of practice is something that is inculcated by the code of ethics. And then it provides a benchmark for a professional to self-evaluate if there is a problem. Now, when you are working, when you start going to industry, most of you are industry already working, you don't have clear cut and dry solutions to your problems. You will be faced with a dilemma where you may have 2 or 3 options of addressing a certain problem. And that is where you have to analyze each one and with reference to the code of ethics, see what is the most suitable. You may not get 100% solution, but one might give you like a 80% solution option, the other one may be 75, then next one might be 92. So you look at the best one, and in that situation, what would be the most suitable way of solving that problem. And again, this is going back to the first one. It says establishes a framework for professional behavior and responsibilities. And these two really, you see, once an institution and profession is well established, like the engineering or the medical profession or the architects or then you see, when you say you have a code of ethics, people, the public who respect the profession, right, know that you are people who have a good framework for operations. Right? And you have a code of ethics, you are acting in a correct way, you are acting ethically. And they would respect you, and you in your turn as an engineer, for example, you have to give back the best to the community, because especially in Sri Lanka, where our education is paid for by the public, by the people. We don't, unless you want to go abroad or something, most of the time you pay your secondary education and your tertiary education is paid for by the taxpayer. So you owe it to the people to do the best for them. So I'll come back to these are some of the foreign engineering institutions that I want to look at. But before that, we'll go to the IESL code of ethics and then see how that compares with these, or these compare with that. Okay. Now, how many clauses does the IESL code of ethics have? Have you read the IESL code of ethics? At least some years ago when I asked, nobody seemed to even know where the IESL code of ethics was. Now it's all on the web and you can see. yeah, there are 8 clauses, and each clause has a number of sub-clauses. Now, the first clause, which is in a sense one of the most important clauses, says that engineers shall hold paramount the safety, health and welfare of the public, okay, and the proper utilization of funds and other resources in the performance of their professional duties. And this shall take precedence over all other aspects, right? So your primary duty, your primary aim is to look after the welfare of the people. And to do this, there are, I think, 7 or 8 sub-clauses again here, which will pop up one by one. So you have to be objective and truthful in your professional reports. Yeah, I don't know why you have discussed the first one here, because it is important, but I think there are a couple of more important ones. But this is how it has been prepared by our forefathers when they prepared the code of ethics. You shall be objective and truthful in your professional reports. So when you have to make a report, when you have to report any issue in writing or verbally, make sure that you are thoroughly conversant with what you are saying, then that you are truthful. Because if you end up, sorry, I'm not, can you all hear me? I don't need to. Because if you end up, if the project you are working on ends up in litigation, right, and you end up in courts, and you have made statements that are not accurate, a good lawyer, he won't be an engineer, but he will be able to tear you to pieces. I have seen good lawyers, who can really rip you apart. Right? And if they find that you have made false statements, you can end up being charged for perjury. Perjury means that lying to the courts, which is a punishable offence with a jail term or a massive fine. So whenever you say anything or write anything, especially if you are writing, make sure that it is correct and truthful, because otherwise you can get into big trouble. And especially once you are a chartered engineer, you are responsible for what you say. You take responsibility for your actions. As long as associate member, fine, there's another chartered engineer above you. But once you become chartered engineer, you are responsible for whatever you say or do. Shall endeavour to at all times to maintain engineering service essential to the public. This is a very important clause, because if the engineers don't maintain the engineering services, there can be big trouble. Now in Sri Lanka, for example, most of our major say public utilities like electricity, water, transport, when the CTB was a monopoly, CMC, so many things, right? Sewage, irrigation, all these are state owned. They are run by the state. It's a monopoly business. Fuel, petroleum. There are no separate. Now in America, for example, if petrol or power generation, there are different companies that generate the power, or in most countries. But here in Sri Lanka, it's one entity, the CEB, National Water Supply and Drainage Board, supplies the water and the sewerage for the countries, the towns that have the sewerage. So if they go on strike, for example, the whole country gets buckled. I don't think any of you were around in maybe around 1995 or thereabouts, when the CEB went on strike for about 4 days on some issue of salaries and car permits and some, pretty little things like that. And the whole country came to a grinding halt. industries. For example, they said hospitals, they will provide standby generation for them. It never worked. It worked for one day and then the sabotage thing, and then hospitals suffered. There was no electricity, there was no water, then the water supply couldn't run because general pumps couldn't be pumped because there was no power again. So it was a huge problem. And it really inconvenienced the public. And public perception and regard that they had for the engineers plummeted. Because they felt that these people were being unfair. They wanted to look after themselves. Okay, fine, you want to get some benefit for yourself, but negotiate and work it out. Don't harm the public. And that's why the first clause says, you shall hold paramount the safety, health and welfare of the public. Your main aim is to the public. Then engineers shall work in standard with, shall work in conformity with recognized engineering standards. Yes. You don't deviate. Engineering standards are designed, have been made up to help you to do a safe design. If you design a building, for example, with the basic principles, you will end up with a design. But there is no safety factor in that. Now the standard generally allows for safety factors. When I do this, like if you're doing a steel structure or something, there will be like 3. So they are quite sure that under such a huge overloading, the building won't collapse or the structure won't fail. So it's very important that you abide by the standards. Electricity distributed, generally I think we are still going by the IEE code. The Electrical Engineers UK, I think we still follow their code, which is really almost universally accepted by most places, and that specifies exactly how you should do all your power distribution safely. That is mainly for the power distribution part of it. Then you don't get involved in conflicts of interest. Now, a conflict of interest is something that when you are working for a organization, you are supposed to work in the interest of your employer. But there are times when you may be tempted to move away from that and do something which might go against your employer. There are some examples that we will come to later in one of the other clauses. But as a professional engineer, you must ensure that if you are being paid your salary by A, you work for A. You don't work for A and then get a handout from B and C to pass information and things like that to him, to the other party. You work, your total commitment is to serve your master. If you are not happy with what he is giving you, or he will tell him, I am not happy, I am resigning, I am going. That's it. But don't play a double game. Then conviction. Now conviction, what he says is that if your judgment in matters pertaining to the health, welfare and safety of the community come up, tell your superiors that there is a possibility that this is going to create problem, and so try to come up with another solution. For again, a simple example here is you are building a factory. Your boss wants to build a factory somewhere in some rural area, and there are effluents, say liquid effluents. The easiest thing is to put it out into the waterway that's flowing by the factory, or put it into the ground by ditches into the wells. That is not acceptable, because you are polluting the waterways and which are used by the community. So you have to convince your superior that he has to put in a treatment plant so that the water that goes out is in conformity with the national standards for clean water. It's an additional cost, and sometimes the boss may not like that, because they are very conscious of their rupees and cents at the end of the day. But now these are becoming much more important and are being enforced to a greater extent. So if you are convinced that the particular project or the particular option that is being proposed by your superior or your owner is not the best from the view of the health, safety or the welfare of the people, then inform him and try to come up with an alternate solution. Don't just tell him this is bad. If you are going to tell him this is not the best thing, you have to give him another option. And whenever you can, if you are have the specialized knowledge in any field of engineering and there is a public discussion, contribute. But talk only in areas that you know. Right? Some of our engineers, for example, when the port city was there are hundreds of people talking about all sorts of things, and most of them didn't know what they were talking about. Right? But if you are specialized in some area and you have the specialist knowledge, then it is your right to advise the authorities that this is not the best way to do it, but there are other options, and this is how we should get over this problem. And most engineering projects will have a whole lot of issues that could create problems as you go along, and that need to be handled. Okay, whistleblowing. What do you know about whistleblowing? Not standing at the junction like the policeman and blowing a whistle, not that. Whistleblowing really is what in our school days would be called sneaking. Right? But now this is becoming an accepted thing, because if you see that there is a violation of the code of ethics, for example, or any violation of anything that will cause harm to the community, you are expected to disclose it. If you find one of your colleagues, you think that he is doing something illegal, first you talk with him. You and a couple of friends, you all are friends, you all meet up in a canteen, have a chat, go out for a drink in the evening, and tell him, look, this is not right. If he still refuses to accept it, you can tell your boss, look, decide this problem, we feel that this is not the correct thing, but can you advise him? Because if you go and report him, then he can lose his job. I mean, you don't want to buckle a man's career. And then of course, if the boss also speaks to him and this guy still refuses to accept it and still carries on with what he is doing illegally, then there is no option but to go to higher authorities. And this has become really very important and is become an accepted practice in the field of accountancy. The Securities Exchange have told all audit firms that if they come up with any situation when they are doing an audit of a company accounts, right, that cannot be justified by the company, they have to report it to the Securities Exchange, and they in turn will then question these people and take disciplinary action if there is no clear answer to this error. So what was considered not a good practice of sneaking and kelanking and also business now is becoming an accepted thing in the industry. And I think even when the bond scam came up, somebody I remember seeing something in the paper about somebody whistleblowing and trying to giving various information to the authorities on this, but what really happened after that, I don't know. And of course, you don't, as an engineer, especially when you are at a senior level in charge of a project, you are handling funds that are government funds, funds from donors, which you have to pay back for. So you have to be very careful and you do not misappropriate any of the public funds. And if there is any situation that needs to be addressed you get involved in dialogue, talk to the people. Now again, a very simple thing is that if you are, say, the water supply scheme, you are trenching and you cut a trench on the road to lay your pipes. Now when you cut that trench, so the people who stay on the other side of the trench cannot take their vehicle out. So before you do that, you have to go and tell, or if you are working in the night, or sometimes you work at night, there will be noise because you have to complete a project in a particular time. So you talk to the community, you tell them, look, we have to do this, we will try to, we will put a temporary pathway for you to take your vehicle out, or we will try to minimize the dust or the noise pollution, but please bear with us for 1 week or whatever time period, because this is for your benefit, and you will have a better water supply system or a better road, which will be of benefit to you. So you have to get involved in talking to the community, because you are really in a way the representative of your organization, of the water board or the RDA or whatever it is. This is about whistleblowing. You can, Usually chartered accountants have now made it, put this into their code of ethics, where whistleblowing is a must. And if you find anything that is wrong, please report it to the Securities Exchange. Okay, so now that's clause 1. Any questions on clause 1? Because clause 1 is one of the bigger clauses and a more important clause. Okay, then shall we go on to 2? Now 2 is of course fairly straightforward. Engineers shall do nothing to bring disgrace to the profession. Right? You shall act in a manner to uphold and enhance the honor, integrity and dignity of the profession while safeguarding public interest. So, I think, for example, we all of us have this somehow inbuilt to some extent. You will do nothing that will, say, bring discredit to your school or your university, and later on your profession, because this is your bread and butter finally is coming from your profession. So you don't do anything that is going to bring dishonor. And this is why I say when the public who respect the engineer find that the engineer has done something illegal, and he's been prosecuted or charged or been accused of something, financial or anything bad, bribery, corruption, or any of those areas, the public perception of the engineer goes down. And it's not that particular person, it is the profession that gets the black mark. So, and this is something that we see that we have to be very careful not to bring dishonor to the profession. And one of the ways that you can bring dishonor is by being dishonest. And you don't get involved in fraudulent or dishonest business practices. It's easier said, but we unfortunately find that in Sri Lanka this has become, I think not even globally, this has become a fairly common business. Then do not use association with other people or to conceal unethical acts. So basically you do something illegal and then you know that you get caught, you're in trouble. So the easiest thing is to try and cover it up. So you go to your father or your uncle or somebody who knows the chairman of that particular organization and say, look, and he goes and tells you, look, my son seems to have done something, or daughter maybe, has done something which is not quite right. Can we sort of sweep this under the carpet? And you use the position of somebody, the privileged position of somebody to cover up your sins. And you don't do that, because when that gets exposed, at some point of time this is going to get exposed. And at that point of time when that happens, it's a black mark for the profession. You don't conduct or you continue to work with engineers who have been removed from the role of the institution. Now, this happens very rarely that we have people being removed from the role of the institution, but the example is that just in case you have a company, we are both chartered engineers, you and your friend are working, and you Mr. Pereira, you are working with Mr. Silva, who is also engineers. Pereira and Engineer Silva set up a company. Pereira Silva, chartered engineers, structural specialists, and whatever it is. Right? Now, unfortunately, Mr. Silva gets caught one day for doing something illegal and is removed from the role. And here, illegal, we are not talking of not paying your subscription and being taken off the role. But this is something which is really bad and totally unethical. So now you cannot continue to have your name board saying Pereira and Silva chartered engineers. So you have to remove Silva completely. And it has become Pereira chartered engineers, structural specialists, or whatever it is. If your son is also an engineer, maybe you can put Pereira and Sons, like not bakers but engineers, and continue the business with the same name. Then when you're employ people, select people on the basis of merit. Again, something that does not happen that easily in our very state-oriented sector. Because when you have to interview people for a job, you will get a list of people with various recommendations from various politicians. Now, if you are going to recruit, like now say I was on the board of the CB for different times for people for the power stations and all that, so you are taking about 40-50 engineers, mechanical engineers. So at that time you can afford to take 5 guys to satisfy some minister. But you want the best people, because you want the companies, the organization suffer if you take the mediocre person. You want the best engineers who can deliver the goods. So whenever, but if you are like for private sector, when you are recruiting maybe a few people, 2 or 3 or 4 people, then you want the best, you want the absolute best, because they are the ones who can really take the business forward. So you always, as far as possible, you go on the basis of meritocracy and make your selection on that basis. Then of course when you select people, and make sure that you pay them good salaries in keeping with the market rates. Don't try to cut corners and pay them low salaries. But because they are also engineers, they are also qualified people. Maybe they are not yet got their charter, but for that level, there will be a market value that you can pay them. Okay, so that's clause 2. Anything you want to ask? And now we get on to clause 3, which is really deals with environment. Engineers shall be committed to the need for sustainable management of the planet's resources and seek to minimize adverse environmental impacts of the engineering works or application of technology, so as to protect both present and future generations. Fine. Now, most of the problems that we are having with the environment, global warming and all these things about ice crust melting and all that, is because of engineers. Right? With the industrial revolution and the development of thermal power and all these things, we happily, put out all the flue gases. We never bothered to check the effluents, nothing. and we happily progressed. Now we are finding that there is a huge price that we have to pay because of this. So now, before any engineering project is supposed to be done, you have to do what's known as a EIA, right, environmental impact assessment, to make sure that what you are going to do, right, will either eliminate any risk of damage to the environment. You may not be able to do it 100%, but minimize the adverse effects on the environment. And this is a critical thing for any major project. And a lot of the donor-funded projects, where there are responsible donors like the World Bank and the ADB and JICA and people like that, or RAID and USA, they insist on very good EIAs and a complete EIA being done before they can approve the disbursement of the loan. But there are others, donors, who take a much more lenient view of this and just allow things to go along as long as they get the business. And one classic example, which somebody was talking about, this is the Umaware project, which was rejected by ADB and JICA because there was no proper EIA done. There was no EIA. So finally, it went to people who were willing to get the job and to help with the EIA. And finally, to satisfy the public, a EIA was written 2 years after the project started. It was meaningless. And that is why Umaware is really saddled with 101 problems. You read the press, you go into the web and read about Umaware, there are tons of problems there. So you have to be very careful that a good EIA is done, and as an engineer you are only one of a team that will be working here, right? Because there are all sorts of other people involved. Anyhow, I'll come to that in the next one. Basically, as engineers, you should be also aware of the different legislations and rules and regulations regarding environmental protection, the theoretical, legislative, regulatory and policy aspects. Right? You are not supposed to know this by heart, and now there are environmental, big firms will have environmental lawyers and all who will be very proficient in this, but you must have an idea of what you can do and what you can't do. So you need to be aware of the National Environmental Act, for example, that will tell you, these are the things that you should do and this is what you should do before you start a project. And you have to work, as I said, you are not to do a EIA or to do any project, any major project, involve the whole team of people. It's not just one engineer or two engineers. There are engineers and engineers of different disciplines. Right? If you take a big hydroelectric project, there are electrical, structural, dam specialists, geologists, geotechnical engineers, and then there are also people like sociologists, environmentalists, financial accountants, human resource specialists. There are a whole team of people that make up a project, that are a project team. And you have to be able to work with people, and this is a team working, which is very important for you as engineers. Becomes a very important aspect of doing your work. You can't say, I am the engineer, I am superior to the others. That's not going to work. Because you are just one of a team. And each one has a specialist area of knowledge that is relevant to getting the complete picture. So cooperation and working as a team is also a very important thing for you as engineers. Then analyze proposed project application new technologies. Now, if you're trying to use AI, there are important, but so still we haven't come to using AI to any great extent this year. But one new technology that came some years ago was coal-fired boilers, coal-fired plants at Russel. And I don't think we really did a proper environmental assessment to see what damage could result because of the coal fire. There is on some one hand, the flue gases. If you don't have proper, and there are particles in the flue gas, if you don't have proper scrubbers and cleaning of the flue gases, there will be pollution. The water, the cooling water which is taken from the sea, which went to for cooling the system, ended up in the sea at some 4 degrees, 3 or 4 degrees higher than ambient, which had adverse effect on marine life. Now all this should have been addressed before the project started and proper controls made. This project was originally going to be a Japanese project, but then for whatever reasons, the government decided that our good friends from China would be the best people to do this. And they are not very fussy about all these things like EIAs and all that. Let's get the job, get the power done, and we get power 900 megawatts of power for keep the country going. Half the time those are breaking down, that's another story. Now these are things again that at site level you can do. Identify, assess optimum material recovery and disposal. Try to see where you can reuse material. See, earlier we did anything that came, we just threw away. Now even things like cartons, boxes, timber is being reused to a great extent. Debris from when you break up a building, the debris is taken and broken and reused for either for road surfacing or for some sort of filler. And make sure that there is safe disposal. Now we still don't have a proper policy for electronic waste and even batteries. Batteries we generally tend to throw batteries into the garbage, where the battery the chemicals and whatever the battery can leach out and it gets into the soil, and these can create problems. Ideally, you are supposed to collect all these, and there is supposed to be a safe disposable way of doing this, but I don't think that's ever got working in Sri Lanka properly. So that's another area that we need to look at. And conservation. Now, at least in our homes, we try to practice conservation because of the electricity, especially today, with the electricity tariffs going sky high. Make sure that you knock off your lights, you knock off the air conditioners. Don't use the air conditioners if you can. Put in, the solar panels. Try to minimize the energy, because at the moment we are getting, say, if we are using thermal energy, or we are using it's a very costly item. Whereas if you can have solar or hydro, it's much less costly, and these are renewable energies. Say that the fossil fuels will be exhausted in some time, maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is. But when that happens, so by that time we have to have a good option of renewable energy available. So conservation is again very important. So I'll go on to 4, and that is your own achievements. You can build your reputation on merit, and you don't compete unfairly. You on your own achievements, you get recognition. That's what they are saying. So you don't, for example, resort to bribery to go up the ladder in your job. You may think this is funny, but it happens. You get around the right person who is controlling the business, and you can go up. There was a person who, in some company where I had some dealing with, a very mediocre person. But he was smart. He got to know his boss's anniversary, the wife's birthday, and for all the occasions he used to send the flowers and gifts and things like that. So she used to tell her husband, look, this is a really nice guy, why don't you give? And he got promotion and ended up as a director. So, and he was really a very mediocre person. But that is the type of thing that can happen. So it's not only a question of or take them out for dinner or do something like that, and you actually bribe your way up the ladder, not because of your merit and your capabilities. Do undercutting. Sri Lanka, we are famous for undercutting people. But if somebody else has been appointed to a job who is better than you, don't start spreading stories about him and try to undercut him. Very often what happens is they will go and tell the boss, this guy, he's a supporter of that party, or he is not in the right political camp, and we shouldn't have him as the head of that department, and try to undercut him so that you get into that position and this poor guy gets knocked out. Misrepresentation. Do not misrepresent anything you put out in your CVs when you are applying for a job. Right? If you have a second lower, don't write and say that you have a second upper in your CV. Now it is very easy to find these out. Just all it is go to the university web page, or you contact the registrar and you will get all that information. Don't say that you handle this project, that project and that project in this company, because a call to the HR manager there will give you all that information. And once you know that this guy is a liar, this person is lying, then you are not going to take that risk. So don't end up by misrepresenting your capabilities. Go by what you actually have done. And you raise your eyebrows, it's fine, you have a problem. Don't, because if you get caught, it's going to be a bad mark against your career. Because that company can always inform another company who might ask, this guy came to you for an interview and what happened? He said, no, we found that he had conned in his CV and we didn't take him because we can't trust him. And that's very bad for your future. Malicious talk. Again, another one of our favorite pastimes, because moment again, if we want to knock somebody out, we go in for the Kalapatra, the famous Kalapatra stories that we have, and put up something on the canteen notice board, all anonymous of course. And now with social media, it's so much easier to put out all this malicious information where you discredit somebody. 90% of it is cons. It's not true. But it's a bad practice and it's very unethical. If you have something against somebody, go and tell him straight to the face. But because you can't, you know it's not true. And the tragedy is that even now in schools this thing is coming up, where a particular person is appointed as the captain of the rugby team. There will be, who? No, I'll call you. Yeah, I know. I'm at a lecture right now. I'll call you when I get home. Okay, bye. You can, spread, sorry, I lost track of what I was saying, but malicious talk is something that is really not acceptable, because you really try to undermine the person by putting out also false information. And like I say, in schools, person appointed as captain of a cricket team or and there will be WhatsApp messages, all unknown, unsigned messages that come saying this one did that, that one did that, so and so bribed the coach, or that is now becoming a really bad practice. We were never there maybe 30-40 years ago when I was going to school, but now this has become a sort of regular thing that's happening. So it's unfortunate. It's a bad reflection on our whole national culture that we are doing this. And this is happening even in the top schools, which is not good, because those children who are supposed to be going to be the leaders maybe in the future are also learning this bad practice of resorting to the kalapatra type of thing, and social media has made it very easy now for this type of thing to happen. But this is unethical, and if you get caught, I don't know. And then you also use your connection with people to go up the ladder and to do things, because you want to get the job and you go and tell your father to talk to the boss, to the chairman, and you get that. We spoke about that earlier also. And then modesty. Engineers, I must say, are very modest. They don't make a big hue and cry about what they do. They don't go talking a lot about I did this and I built that bridge and I built this building and I did whatever it is. Because in the first place, engineering is a joint. You are working as a team. Right? If you are involved in designing a bridge, you are one. There will be geotechnical engineers, structural engineers. There will be a whole plethora of people, and it's not just one man. Architects, yes, maybe they are the ones who do the design for the building, and they can give some of the weirdest designs. But suppose structural engineer who has to design that building to meet that architect's design, and this is where some really top level structural engineers have come out, because they've been able to handle this type of futuristic building designs. But by and large, engineers are very modest. They don't even put their name up on the site saying that I am the engineer handling this job. The contractor and all put it up, and also acknowledge the work done by your subordinates, because you are a team. Again, as the engineer, any project, we work as a team, and you can't say that I did this project. It's my team that we work. I may have supervised and I may have guided them, but they all contributed. Unfortunately, this type of thing goes on, and I mean, again, one fairly large bridge that was built in the eastern province, president came to open it, and the chief engineer there, or the subordinates who all asked to go and this is only for security reasons, you can't come anywhere near the. So the guys were shunted back, and this guy, I was there because I was a part from the consultancy team, was going down behind the president saying, look, I'm going to build this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to trying to butter him and show that if not for him, this bridge would never have been built. No credit was given to his team of subordinates, who were also chartered engineers, most of them, for the work that they did. So this is again not a good practice, and you should always acknowledge the work done by your other members in the team. Plagiarism, I think you know what plagiarism is, especially if you are writing reports. When you are doing research, if you are going to use anybody else's work, acknowledge it. Otherwise you end up in problems where you can be, and again now it's very easy, especially people who write for your thesis, you write a report, it's very easy to go in. There are particular software that allow you to check and see whether there has been this particular concept has been used earlier, and once you get caught, it reflects badly. And there have been cases where some senior academics have been internationally have been found guilty of using other people's works without acknowledging it. So be careful when you do these things, and it's always good to say that, okay, sometimes you may have to write and get permission from that person to use his works, or at least mention it in your work that, sort of acknowledge with thanks the fact that you could be able to use this person's calculations or whatever it is in doing part of your work. But always be honest on this matter. And again, intellectual property rights are there. You cannot violate that, because any concept or any work done by somebody, even things like a play, are covered by intellectual property rights. And there was a case in Sri Lanka where, as usual, we don't pay much attention to these things, where one of our, in the English theatre, one of our fairly well-reputed producers was doing a Broadway hit. He'd done a couple earlier and got away with it. I don't think anybody realized. And then suddenly, when you're doing this, there was a letter that came from their lawyers to a local firm, a very senior firm of lawyers here, saying that you are doing this and violating the intellectual property rights, because you have doing this without getting permission of the owner. And if you do not withdraw this, there will be legal action taken against you. So they quickly sort of called off the whole process of practices and all that, and got into the process of trying to get permission, which took about a year or two, and they got the necessary permission and then went ahead and did the play. So now you have to be careful of all these additional new features that are coming when you are doing anything. You can't just do it and get away with it. And of course, when you are charging fees, don't charge extremely high fees. You might do that because you are doing it for some friend of yours and you know that he will pay you anything. So you jack up the. But on the other hand, find people go very low. And when they go low, they can't really complete the job because they have underquoted. So these are things you have to guard against. And really, when you are on the client side, you have to monitor and see that the prices quoted are realistic. And in today's context, with the way prices are going up, it's very hard to do that. You go to buy materials, what is today, 1 week ago, it's doubled almost. Okay, so plagiarism, I won't go into it, but it's there. You can the bottom line is that it is fraud. It's an act of fraud, because it involves stealing someone else's work and lying about it afterwards. Because you deny that you copied somebody else's work or took somebody else's concept and ideas. Specialization. Now, specialization means that you should only work in areas of your competence. If you are a civil engineer, okay, any civil engineer, for example, can do a building up to 2 stories, I think. But beyond that, as the number of floors increase, there are specialist requirements. And the IESL, for example, conducts a certifying course for like low rise, okay, mid rise, high rise, then next about 3-4 levels of high rise buildings going up to like 30 or 40 floors, where you have to prove that you have done designs, that you are capable of doing it, and you are interviewed. So, and those people who pass that, their names are sent to the local authorities and all the state institutions, so that if anybody wants to build a 30-story building, they know that the person who is doing the design, the engineer, is a person who is capable of doing that. So, it's very important that you work only in areas that you are specialized and capable of working in. Now, even the CEB for house wiring, for improving the wiring of a building. And earlier, a lot of it was done by some electrician and sometimes some engineer who was maybe a chartered engineer put his signature in. Now you can't. You have to be registered with the CEB to authorize the wiring, the wiring design for a building. So before they give you a connection to your house, even so, they have to come and check that and make sure that it is done correctly. So you can't, and if you are not, and your registration with CEB is, I think, every year you have to renew it. So there are much more better safeguards to ensure that the safety of the public is protected. Bottom line is that. And if you don't know, now if your boss may tell you, I want to build a 20-story building, can you do it? If you are only certified up to say 12 story or each story or whatever it is, you have to tell him, look, I am not capable of doing this. But I have my friend who is certified and qualified to do that, and I will ask him to come to do a quotation and see if it is okay. I will work with it, so I also can learn and improve my knowledge to do a higher rise building than what I am at the moment capable of doing. So, but you don't try to undertake that on your own, because technically you will at some point of time, if you get caught out, that whole building will be considered, so the whole design will be null and void. And you don't sign anything. Basically, if you are signing any document, especially as a chartered engineer, you take responsibility. You take responsibility for what you do. As long as associate member or less, it doesn't matter. Somebody else takes a responsibility. But once you become a chartered engineer and you sign off a design, you are responsible. And if you end up in litigation, then you are responsible if any. And you have to face the consequences if anything were to go wrong. So engineers shall apply their skills and knowledge in the interest of the employer or client for whom they shall act in professional matters as faithful agents. So basically what I am saying is, like I said earlier, if you are working for somebody, you work for him. You are loyal to him. And loyalty is the key of this particular clause and the sub-clauses. And some of the, you avoid conflicts of interest, for example. That's one area that if you are working for somebody, and this includes, getting money, kickbacks, various things. Now one area that this could happen is like in a major, for example, the example of what happens here on the Southern Highway. We were involved in the Kurunduga-Hatakmatu Galle. The highway design was given by the RDA. But the bridges were on a design and build for the contractor. The contractor was entrusted with the job of designing and building. And they was expected to get, either they could use their specialist engineers, or they could go to, some of them didn't have, they went to the firms like the CCB or some of the universities to get the specialized designs done. Now the reverse process would be that a contractor might approach one of the engineers in the RDA and say, look, can you do this design for me? Somebody in the design office, and he knows. Now, knowing very well that if he does the design, his friend who is certifying the design will certify it without asking questions. So that is a totally unethical practice. And that creates a conflict of interest, because you are doing something where, okay, somebody else might be able to do a better design, a more cost-effective design than what is being done by that particular person. And because they are all buddies, that design gets passed. So this is a conflict of interest. Another situation is like when, especially some years ago, before in building services, when there was little knowledge in the field of air conditioning, firefighting, fire protection, all these things in building, vertical transportation, the supplier would come and tell you, look, I'll give you a design for your air conditioning system, I'll give you the POQ and the whole thing, you just put it into your tender document and that's fine. So if you were to do that, you are depriving your company, your client of getting a better, I mean, somebody might have a more cost effective, a more energy efficient system. And now fortunately there are more, I think even the universities are now sending out engineers with this knowledge, but going back say 10-15 years ago, this was like uncharted ground. And so that you had, the contractor was the only one who knew. Lifts, it's not a big thing, but they are still. So the contractor comes and tells you, I will give you this lift, no problem, you put it and it will work. And you happily put that into the tender, and so the tender is written to suit him, that particular supplier. And anybody else who is tendering will find it difficult to compete with that. The specifications are so adjusted that only a particular brand might be able to match that. So that's a conflict of interest, and actually again that goes against your owner, because he is not getting the best value for his investment. Neutrality. Quite often when you become a senior engineer and there's a big project, there is a particular post called D engineer, and that D engineer will be a person from the client's organization. Now he is actually in between the client, the contractor and the consultant, and he actually is supposed to handle situations that may arise. Now example again here is that a particular contractor has to finish a particular job in say 1 week, particular section of the job of the project. It rains, so he comes and says, look sir, I want to reboot the claim, he wants 4 extra days or 5 extra days to complete the job. So all you do is, okay, let's see the rainfall figures for now every site maintains a record of the rainfall, morning, afternoon, throughout the day. You look at that and you say, look, okay, there were 2 days where there was rain and you couldn't work. There was 1 day where it was okay, with damp, okay, but you could have done some work inside. 2 days you could have worked. So I will allow you say 2.5 days extra, but nothing more. Again with you see a lot of the use of the machinery you are using, the earth-moving equipment and all the heavy machinery, you relies on diesel. And the fuel prices going up, you quote at one level, when you are doing the job with escalation in prices, so then you make an appeal, and the engineer has to look at this and say, look, okay, it went up from this date, you use so much of fuel, okay, I can allow you so much of extra amount for on your claim, but not what you are also asking for, much more than what you are really entitled to. So this is where you have got your neutral, and if you allow a genuine, as the engineer, you allow a genuine claim rather than, of course, the contractor might try to offer you something under the table to get his claim passed, but it's up to you to be ethical in how you do this and ensure that you are looking after the interest of your owner or your client. Shall not accept compensation. You don't get paid for more than one part. You have been paid, not like what I said, if somebody approaches the engineer to do the design and gets pays him for that. Now he's been paid by his owner, the RDA, right? But he's also been paid by somebody else. You don't get paid. You don't do that. you get paid. But if you are approached by somebody and they wants to do a design, then you have to go and tell the organization, look, I've been asked to do this design, I will do this, and but I leave it to people who evaluate it to make sure that they do a thorough and detailed check, and there are no favors asked. But generally, these things never happen that way. This is like what I said earlier, these free engineering designs. This is something again you should not tolerate. You should always look at getting the best design. Get a good consultant who knows the subject to do the design for you, rather if you are not capable. Because you may be a specialist in the contract management or in certain parts of civil engineering, but like air conditioning or fire protection, you need to get specialized knowledge, and don't rely on contractors to give you that knowledge, because they will give it loaded in their favor. Bribery, this of course, so always people will be trying to bribe you and see that you get their bills passed and you get various things done. You have to be firm and be true to yourself. Your conscience will tell you what's the right thing to be done, and the little devil there who tells you, why don't you take that bribe, you can lead a better life. It should not be tolerated. You don't, again this question of getting bribes from various people, and then conviction. If you feel that what your owner wants you to do is not the best thing, then you have to tell him that you are convinced that that's not the best thing, but offer him a solution, an option. Because don't just tell him what you're trying to do is not correct. Give him an option of how this can be got over. Confidentiality. This is another very important clause here. Now, when you go up to senior levels, you are entrusted with a lot of information that is relevant to you, to your company, and is important to your company, but it also may be of interest to competitors. If you, for example, in R&D and you are working on a design of any particular component or particular item, this will be cost effective, will be energy efficient, whatever it is, and there will be people in the business who will be wanting to get hold of that design, and they may offer you good rewards for passing the design over to them. Or if you are involved in working on a big tender and you are a senior engineer, so you are handling a lot of the major work, the costing and working on the prices, there will be competitors who are also bidding for the same job, who will want to find out what are you doing, what's your company doing, and they will take you out for dinner, maybe to 5-star, 7-star, whatever hotels, maybe offer you a good gift. But that is not ethical. You should not succumb to that type of temptation, because your loyalty is to your owner, the man who is paying you your basic salary. Now after taxation and all, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but anyhow, at the end of the day, still you are liable to your owner, and you have to honor the trust he has placed in you by giving you the option of doing this particular job. Then you don't sign any documents and all unless you are sure that they are conforming to engineering standards and that there is no risk for the public when this project, this particular design is used. Ideally, you should, even if your design, the design may be done by a subordinate, but at some point of time you should sit with the subordinate, with the junior engineer, go over the design and just check everything, make sure that it is correct. And your two heads are better than one. And you have the experience, you have more experience than that young engineer. So the right thing would be for you to go and even call in another senior colleague also and relook at it. So clause 7 is be truthful, like I told you earlier, don't con, because if you be precise, knowledgeable whenever you submit a report, and don't fall into this trap of getting caught out, because if you were to end up in litigation, you could be in deep trouble by giving false information out. And if, say, especially when it comes to a situation where you have to go to courts, you may be approached by the other party and offered a good reward if you were to bend your evidence a little in their favor, and not. But be careful, because the moment you do that, you can be, and if you're found out, it will end up with a case of perjury against you, and you most probably will end up in Velikada or one of these other places. Not under the PTA, but for lying and not being honest. So avoid these pitfalls. You feel like giving up engineering now and going and doing something else. No? And I think this is one of the most important clauses again in the IESL list of clauses. Continuing professional development. See, when you get out of the university, you think you know everything about engineering. You have just the tip of the iceberg. And engineering is not a dead science. It's constantly developing, it's constantly improving. There are various new concepts coming in. And you have to keep abreast with that if you want to progress your career. At the time I graduated from Peradeniya, mechanical engineering consisted of linkages, cam, gear wheel, belt drive, that was it. Now we are into the field of mechatronics, we are into so many AI, so many new areas. And you have to keep abreast with these new technologies if you want to progress your career. You can't say that, okay, what I learned so many years ago is it. That's the catch whisker. It's not. So you have to constantly improve your knowledge, and I think the IESL and a lot of the other institutions also have very good CPD courses which you can follow. I know the foreign institutions, they are more expensive, so they are costed in dollars or pounds sterling or whatever it is. But there are also, I know the IMECI has certain free CPD courses, which are also useful for the engineer. I think the ICE and the IET and all have similar courses. So always keep abreast with. So that is, the engineers just try to widen their knowledge and improve their skills to improve continuing improvement of the profession. And you should also encourage your subordinates to also look at improving their knowledge. You have young engineers coming under you for training, for working in your department. Let them also learn, encourage them to go for CPD courses outside. If you can have in-house courses. And if possible, if your organization can even afford to pay for some of these courses. I know now, when I was working in the private sector, MSc in engineering, the company paid, gave you a loan, and if you pass, the loan was cleared. But if you failed, of course, you had to pay for that time. And so, like that, there are a lot of incentives that are given by the private sector and the government as well. No? Actually, in the past, the government, you were almost assured of a scholarship to the UK, Australia, or the States. Now it's going to come Japan and India and various places. But after so many years of practice, you go. I think the doctors also have that privilege where they go after 2 or 3 years for postgraduate study. A lot go to England, Australia. The tragedy is that now they don't come back. they all go there and they find jobs there. And it's the situation here. I know quite a lot of my engineering colleagues whose wives are doctors who have gone and are now happily settled down there. So that is the unfortunate situation that we are faced with this present crisis in the country. And this is of a bit of sales talk. Encourage fellow Indians to support the institution. And I think whatever it is, it's good for you to support the institution, because the institution has a lot of areas that you can learn. The CPD courses, also networking. You get to know people. You come from, I think now they have these sectional committees, the mechanical engineering, sectional committee, civil engineering, electrical, telecom, chemical, and then you meet people. And that helps you in your career development and looking for jobs, all that type of thing. So basically, the IESL Code of Ethics has these 8 clauses, and the first clause, which is one of the most important ones, is concerned about the people, looking after the welfare of the people, the public. Uphold the honor of the profession. You don't do anything to besmirch the reputation of the engineering profession. You ensure that environmental protection is maintained in all your work. You develop your reputation through your own achievements, not by bribing people or using various contacts that your elders may have. You practice only in areas of your specialization. That is, you don't go out of that area, because if something will go wrong, you can be found guilty of working in an area that you are not competent. You are loyal to your employer, be truthful in reporting, and be involved with lifelong learning. So that's it as far as the IESL Code of Ethics is concerned. Any questions? Engineering politics is hard anybody, unfortunately.
What I mean is, one of the profession.
Yeah.
So if some people are involved in politics, how could that affect the
You see, it all depends on how, I don't know, what you feel, right? Because if you get involved in politics, at the moment politics is a dirty game. Like if you get involved in politics and if you are in the ruling party, you will be maybe having to specialize advice on large scale infrastructure projects. Because you are the engineer. You are one of the only person with the technical knowledge. In that there are a whole lot of lawyers and O-level qualified people and other fellows in the party, but you are the one specialist. There are 1 2 doctors, but as far as engineering is concerned, you are the one. And this is where you succumb to the temptation of, because definitely the contractors and people suppliers would like to get the thing for them, and they will offer you really good rewards. So it all depends on how you address the situation, and your commitment to being ethical and honest and serving your country so the country gets the best option rather than getting some third-rate option, but looking after yourself. Human nature being what it is very difficult to give a clear definition of these things. But the only thing is that honesty and integrity on the part of the engineer is something that we hope will come from this, at least a basic knowledge of ethics. I hope that answers the question. It's very hard to there is no clear cut, like ethics, there is no clear cut definition by solving a mathematical problem. These are give and take situations.
In the exams, how do you normally like to ask your questions like
Sorry?
point form like essays, or how do you normally prefer?
Depends. Not I would expect them to at least write a sentence or two, rather than just putting, because originally this B paper was very particular about English. Now we are trying to break that because let's face it, people who come into the faculty of engineering are all come with going to like a single lot and immediate. And it's not fair to expect them to be overnight scholars in English and be able to write very precise Shakespearean language and put the answer. But as long as they can put across a concept, if you look at some of the past papers, generally it's a question of answering, how you of something which is basically fairly straightforward. And now, because there are only 8 floors, I think all the questions have been repeated about 10 times over. And that's one problem that we are facing now is how do we go into new areas? Because a lot of the questions that have been asked those past years get repeated. So, but we try to give fair. I personally look at trying to give the person who answering a fair option. Okay, now I think I will skip me.
It's the same question that he asked regarding their own achievement. The lot of organization and the government sector, some person political background, they come with their political background, but they have not proper qualification for that some portfolio. But they always keep loyal to their organizations or political party.
Yeah.
So what are the taken action for that preventing that issues in the government or country?
The thing is, if you are coming in as an engineer, if you are going to recruit engineers, say a government organization, they are going to take there is a basic requirement. You have to be here to become a grade 2 engineer, whatever it is in the government service. You have to have a degree in engineering. And it couldn't matter whether it's a first class or just a pass, but you have to have a degree, right? You have to have so many years of experience. But this is what I said, when you come to evaluate, when you are recruiting, we are looking at where we look. Now, if you say for the CEB for power generation, mechanical engineering, I would look at avoiding some of those interviews. You look at the guys who have got enough practical, but these are not raw people. These are people also who have got some experience. And if they have worked in areas where they have shown some initiative, they have solved problems, then you then weightage. Because at the end of the day, you want the best people to be taken in for that organization. Because the organization can only thrive if you have good people. But just to say, where they're taking about 30-40 engineers, you can afford to make a concession to because the top management of that organization will come and say, look, got this letter from, this is the list from so and so, so and so, so and so. So we might take about 4 or 5 people from that list to keep, so that everybody is happy. For us, as an independent party, it doesn't matter. We would like the best people taken in, but for the people there in that organization, they are under pressure. So we like to sort of take maybe about 5 to 10% from that plot, and the balance are what we think are the best people. And when they come in, they have to prove themselves. And actually now when I sit on PR interview panels, a lot of them have done a lot of innovative work. But now, the PR courses, they have to highlight your competences. Your 5 competences. Are you aware of the competences that are expected of the child for you as the PR? Basically, like I say, I have to skip certain things, but the main area, there are what 5 competences that you have been tested on. Especially the foreign institution only focus on the 5 competences. Actually, your experience report is the least important. So you said I did this. But what the 5 competences ask are: first one, your knowledge and understanding of engineering principles. Go and read the PR rules. Give you everything, our IESL PR rules. Right? The second one, which is really the one that we really look at closely, how do you apply your engineering knowledge to solve problems? And what we expect to say, I did this, I addressed this problem, I solved this issue that was there with this overheating of the turbine or whatever. So that is, and it shows that you have done something. And then the third one is management and leadership. 5th one is communication. And then the 4th one. And the 5th one is again dealing with the code of ethics, environment, safety, CPD. So those actually 1, 2 and 5 are the most important. And we expect that the engineers will come up, and I must say a lot of them are very good. They have done innovative work, but sometimes there is a frustration that sets in because they get blocked when they try to be too smart. This is the unfortunate thing in our culture. We always don't like to see somebody going up, and we always have to pull the monkey back into the pit. So that. But I think there is a lot of potential, and it's a crime. It's very sad that a lot of our people are going and go, leaving and going. These are really good qualifications, are readily accepted in overseas. Okay, so I will just, you can look at this later and figure out what's happening. I will take some case studies. We may go on for about half an hour, and we don't mind because we started a bit late, about 15-20 minutes late, but because I think it's important that we see where things went wrong when we had an engineering problem. And the first one is a local situation where you may remember this building in Velloata behind the Sevavi that collapsed maybe about 5-6 years ago. Excellency building, this was the reception hall. And on May 18th, this building named Excellency building, this was just behind Sevavi cinema, collapsed, and 2 people were killed and over 25 people were injured. Fortunately, this happened in the morning when they were getting the hall ready for a reception in the evening. If in the evening when they had this crowd of people, women and children all there, and this collapse, the fatalities would have been much more and the injured would have been much greater. Now in 2009, approval was obtained to build a 4-story building, 2 basements, a ground and a first floor. But from the analysis, once the photographs of the building after it collapsed, they found that there were 3 floors added to the first front half of the building, and 2 more floors added to the second half of the building. And the second half of the building was on the embankment of the Velloata Canal, where the soil obviously was very dicey. And the structural engineer who was involved brought in by the contractor. The trouble is, a lot of these property developers, they try to cut corners. They don't want to spend money on getting good people. They try to get the cheapest possible. So the contractor had brought in some structural engineer. He was a BSc from one of our state university, but not even a chartered engineer. which meant that he couldn't really take the authority to sign off any design. And the possible reasons for the failure was the increased dead weight. Now your design for the building was 4 floors, but on top of the front of the building, when you see the photograph, there were 3 more floors built, of which 2 were completed and the top one was, so there was all this additional building material all stacked on that floor, so the loading was much greater. The rear half of the building had 2 more floors. So the low and obviously no, if they wanted to add the floor, they should have reevaluated the design, strengthened the foundation, maybe put in a few extra piles, whatever it is. They just went ahead on same foundation design for 4 floors, put in the additional floors. With simple common sense, weight increases. And the weight increases means possibility of failure is great. And of course the designer got a charge of it. So the ethical issues here was the client illegally adding floors without consideration to the risk of safety and of to life and property of the people who were in that building. Now if that building had failed in the evening, as I said earlier, there would have been much more fatalities and injuries. So again, corporate goals overriding technical requirements. Now, technical requirements say, well, okay, you want to increase the building, fine, but get reevaluated, get the structure strengthened, and then go ahead and do it. Now, all this means extra money. So, why do all that? We have designed the structure. Let's put up a few more floors on top of that. By the grace of God, nothing will happen. But it did happen. The engineer acting beyond his level of competence because he was not a trained, he was not a very inexperienced young engineer. And the contractor undertaking the work that had not been authorized, because if they were going to add additional floors, they should have gone and got the building design changed. And if the building design approved, and so this is the Colombo municipality because they lost them, not anywhere else. So the CMC had not taken trouble to, had not authorized the additional floors being added. Because technically if they went to get the design changed, then they would have to also show that the structure had been strengthened. And that the new building could be safely constructed. So also the issue of how honest were the local authority people. In the CMC, one always has a big question mark. How honest were they? Because they may have been obviously bought up by the developer and they never went and checked this. And the lack of monitoring of the project by the local authorities. Probable corruption. As I said, they obviously would have been looked after by the property developer. And the whole tragedy of all this is that nothing ever happens. You see, there is no prosecution. I think all this happened 5-6 years ago. I never heard anything about any action that was taken to prosecute these people. They may have paid some compensation. The 2 people who killed were workers there, so they would have given them some handout to keep them silent. And that's it. This is the unfortunate thing when something happens like this happens. Because this is the building. This is the original, the basement, and then there are 2 floors. Now they put 1 floor, 2 floors, and third one was built to the front of the building. This is on the Sharman Road side. And this is the rear of the building where they have gone up 2 floors. And those 2 floors which are, you see the window of the canal, the embankment is very steep, and I don't think the quality of the soil is that good. And the thing just collapsed. So actually that's the rear part that collapsed. The front part generally remained intact because that is on firm ground, whereas this was only embankment. So that is the story of, and there's also this other. There's the other case in Kandy, which if you go to the web, you'll find that a building can collapse in Kandy, again built on a steep hillside, and again additional floors added, and again added without any correction or strengthening to the foundation. If you go to the web, you get all this stuff there. And the next, I'm keeping it very short because I know the time limitations are there, but anyhow, you can read more about this. In the case of the killer robot, this was happened at a time when industrial automation was just coming in, and people were developing these machines, these robotic machines that would do. Now, if you look at any of the production, like the Japanese car industry, it's a series of these fellows, assembling various stages of the car. But this was at a time when they were just developing this. This is in the States. In 1992, a place called Silicon Tektronix. The name was called Robbie CX30. It killed its operator. The machine killed the operator because of a faulty program where the arm swung and decapitated the guy. His head was knocked off his body, bottom line. So the investigation into the causes of the accident led the authorities to the conclusion that a software module written and developed by Randy Samuels, the Silicon company programmer, was responsible for the erratic and violent behavior that led to the death of Matthews. So this programmer was charged with manslaughter by the Silicon Valley courts. There at least something happens. Here nothing seemed to happen. So the investigation into the accident revealed, of course, when things like this happen in America or in developed country, there are commissions set up and all sorts of investigations and very detailed reports prepared. Because the idea is to avoid a similar thing happening in the future. The first thing they found out when they investigated that this company was unstable. Financially, they were not sound. Tektronix. And they needed to successfully complete this CX30, this industrial robot, because the market was there, people were looking, and they wanted to get this out into the market ASAP. So the management pressurized the staff to rush through the project and take various shortcuts, ignoring established procedures for checking and verifying. Now this is why we say that engineering standards are there to ensure the safety, and this is why whatever you do, any engineering work we do, has to be in line with the standards and procedures, codes of practice that are established for that particular activity. Now here the company tells you, okay, forget about standards, forget about procedures, just finish the job and we have to put it out in the market. Once we put it out in the market, then we start correcting any faults that come out. That's not what it should be. And Randy Samuel's expertise, he was not a programmer. His area of specialization was in specification and computation. So he's like the other man who was not so fully qualified structural engineer, and this guy was not a programmer, but he was pushed into this because the company didn't want to hire a good, competent programmer because of the cost. and he used various software without proper authorization. And worse than that, one of his friends in the company, who was responsible for quality checking of the software, developed or fiddled the program, right? So that the program, when Randy Samuel's program was run through the test process, it showed that it was good, but there were inherent faults in that, and that person fiddled the whole program so that the software, the outcome was favorable for Randy Samuel's program. So there was cheating in addition to everything else. And at that time there was this American Association for Computing Machinery, and there are some of their clauses in their code of ethics is that their moral imperative to contribute to society and human well-being. Like the IESL code, human well-being is one of the critical items. Avoid harm to others. Be honest and trustworthy. Give proper credit for intellectual property. This guy used software without even acknowledging. Access computing and communication resources only when authorized to do so. And respect the privacy of others and honor confidentiality. Now, Randy Samuel did a whole lot of things that were contrary to all these clauses of the ACM. And a lot of the people in that company and in the Silicon Valley at that time were members of this order, because Silicon Valley was that, I think, still is more or less the prime area where IT was being developed, and all these computers and computer programs were being developed. And it was believed that a lot of the people in that company acted in violation of the ACM code of ethics by avoiding standards, by taking shortcuts, and the worst part is that this ended up with the person getting killed. And the ACM investigated members who were in that company for violation of the code of the ACM, that the killer robot incident not only cost a human life, but it has done much to damage the reputation of the computing profession. Now we just learned that you should not do anything that will damage the reputation of your institution. And if they rule that this particular incident was something that did enormous damage to the reputation of the computing profession, and that was the time when this was just building up. So the ethical issue in this was that at a corporate level, violation of professional ethics by disregarding standards and procedures. They were pressurized into taking shortcuts, ignoring everything else. Endangering life and property by failing to do a comprehensive and thorough evaluation of the computing system and their impact with special emphasis on possible risk. Because when you are trying to rush through something, obviously you bypass all this. And this is why it is very important that you pay special attention to evaluate any risk and possible harm that can come to the user. Disregarding safety to meet corporate targets, because they want to get the machine out as soon as possible into the market, and bringing disrepute to the profession, that is the computing profession, by through negligence. And at a personal level, and this was the accusations against the corporate entity, Tektronix. And at a personal level, Randy Samuel was doing work outside, in areas outside his competence, because he was not a programmer, and his associate who falsified the information and procedures to hide and misrepresent the actual situation. Because if the actual outcome of the test had been known, then there would have been a lot of further modifications that were required to get that program safe, to make that program safe. But those were ignored. And the final one I'm going to take is the Titanic. Now, how many of you, I think all of you would have seen the Titanic, the movie. Nobody didn't see the Titanic. None of you sailed on the Titanic. When the Titanic, it's like it was considered one of the most luxurious vessels ever built. But when you go into the history of it, you find that there are so many engineering flaws and bad practices that it was really shocking. So the Titanic was the largest and most luxurious vessel built at that time in 1912, and it was considered unsinkable. On its main voyage from Southampton to New York, it hit an iceberg which was supposed to be many times larger than the mass of the vessel, and 6 forward compartments were ruptured, and the vessel took in water and sank in 2.5 hours, or 2 hours, that's what it is. And 1,500 people were killed, were drowned. Now we had 2 people being killed in Bellavata, 1 person in Silicon Valley, and here 1,500 people went down with the ship. Now, competition on that time, though this was before planes were there, before you could fly across the Atlantic. There were no commercial airlines operating in 1912. This is before the First World War. And it was the travel was by ship, by steamer. And there was a lot of competition to get across as fast as possible. So the company, the ship that owned this White Star Line, they wanted to get the crossing done in 6 days, whereas normally it would take 8-9 days. And to achieve this, the captain had to maintain a maximum speed of the ship of something like 21 knots. 21.5 knots is something 40 kilometers per hour. You see, marine rate of travel is measured in knots, AOTS knots, as against miles per hour on land or kilometers per hour. So the captain and this was the first voyage, the maiden voyage, and a lot of the top brass from that company were also on board. So they were pressurizing the captain to take this across in 6 days. But then they could say that, okay, our new liner, which is the most modern, luxurious liner ever built, can also take you in the fastest possible time across the Atlantic. So the captain was this was his last voyage. He was a very senior captain with the shipping line. He was going to retire. And this was his final voyage, where he would go across and he was get some very good gratuity and a lot of benefits by completing this voyage in the 6 days. So he was under a lot of pressure to do this, and he hammered at 21.5 knots, tried to maintain that throughout. Now 2 days after leaving England, the captain received iceberg warning, 7 iceberg warning from his crew. Now mind you, this was the time there was no radar. There was a guy up on the mast, top of the mast, in what was called a crow's nest, lookout, right? And I think the 2 masts at 2 ends, there were these 2 guys who had to shiver in the cold. I mean, of course, they were all, but it was not a happy or pleasant thing to do. And it was visual. Morning, yes. In the night, what do? If the iceberg is on top of you, you can't do anything. So when you get warnings from other ships that are crossing, because they have seen this iceberg, and that time, the North Atlantic, there were lots of icebergs, because it was and but the captain, maybe because he wanted to get a good package when he retired, and maybe because of the pressure from the company people, maintain that maximum speed. If we had called for the ship to slow down and strengthen the lookout, okay, there were 2 people there, but maybe the Titanic could have, disaster may not have happened. But this is speculation, we don't know. But the fact is that he maintained top speed, even in the night when visibility was very poor. Now the ship was considered unsinkable, and this was because, engineering wise, this was a really good design. It was a top class design. It had 16 watertight compartments around the ship, which had electrically operated watertight doors, and it extended from the ship's double bottom to 4 or 5 of a 9 decks. So the whole bottom of the ship had this, safeguard by having these compartments which could be locked and made watertight. So that the buoyancy could be balanced. And because of they could be locked, automatically locked, it prevented water from seeping into the other areas of the ship. And they were supposed to provide maximum safety in times of flooding or damage to the hull. Now, unfortunately, the compartments didn't go the full height. They didn't go the full height, as they should have done, because then they would have been completely watertight, that whole area. Because the owners didn't want them to, because if they went the full height, they would have to reduce the living space of the first class cabin. Now, this was a luxury line, their money was coming from the very affluent, the millionaires who were going to cross. So they didn't want, there are those rooms, even in the film you see the rooms are like, like in palace. You don't think you're floating on the sea. And so they didn't want them to obstruct the room, and these were stopped like at a point where water could still get in. Now, if the marine architect who designed the ship had insisted on making them to the correct height, then maybe the integrity of the watertight compartments would have been ensured. Basically, if we had whistleblown, if we had made public the fact that this was not done properly, because the owners wanted to cater to the affluent. Fortunately, England at that time, because the class system and all was there, he may not have been locked up, or what he said would have been disregarded. But that was the case of failure to disclose that there was a flaw. Now, this is another. The total capacity of the Titanic was 3,500 odd. Now, the legal requirement for lifeboats was not on the number of passengers that the ship carried, but on the weight of the ship. This was some archaic rule that the British marine industry used at that time. So the Titanic was designed based on the weight of the ship. The Titanic was supposed to have 32 lifeboats, but it only had 20 lifeboats. Enough for 1,300, although the capacity of the ship was 3,500, that for the crossing they had only 2,200. Now they reduced the lifeboats from 32 to 20 because again the owners didn't want the deck to be cluttered up with lifeboats, because has spoiled the look of the ship, and because then they would have more room for deck sports and all for the affluent passengers. And then when they were loading the lifeboats, when the ship was sinking, the crew loaded the lifeboats based on the class system. The first class passengers were all as far as possible loaded into the boats. The second class fellows were given, and the poor passengers who were down in the hole and who were trying to go to America to earn a living, most of them were not taken on board. And even though the boats were not, and because then the boats were not loaded to the maximum capacity, which is the British naval tradition going back, was the Birkenhead. The Birkenhead was a vessel which was during the Boer War in South Africa. It was coming back to UK with the wives and families of the military who were fighting there in South Africa. And the Birkenhead at some point of time in the Atlantic, whether it hit iceberg or what, but it started sinking. And then the tradition, the captain's order was, women load the lifeboats, women and children first. First, because there were a lot of women and families, women and children first, and any elderly or disabled people. And that became a tradition in the British maritime fleet. Any time there was a disaster, women and children going first, and finally the captain goes down with the ship. Captain and crew, most of them go down with the ship, after that goes on manning the lifeboats. But they ignored this, and they pushed all the first class people in the boats and let the third class fellows swim or sink. And the boats were never filled up. So finally, out of the 2,200 odd people who were on board, only 706 survived. Which was really tragic, because at least if the boats could have taken even 1,300, further another 500-600 people, that would have made a difference. If they loaded it to full capacity, but they didn't. So these are the ethical issues that come up from the sinking of the Titanic, which was always considered a very glamorous thing. That the Titanic, you see that film also, it's very glamorous. It's all DiCaprio and the girl all days. It's very grand, but really, you look at behind the scenes, there have been lots of things that were not done right. So the failure to safeguard life and property, which is one of the primary requirements of any code of ethics. Reduction of the lifeboats from the design number 32 to 20. That is because they wanted to accommodate, they didn't want to spoil the looks and give more room for the rich to have deck sports and things like that. Modifying the 16 watertight compartments so that the partitions are not full height. Forcing the captain to complete the voyage in 6 days. Run at maximum speed. They had taken a huge risk, knowing that there were icebergs, the big icebergs, and the fact that they had to depend on visual lookouts in the night especially, for seeing whether there was any iceberg or any obstruction, or even another ship, at least another ship would have lights on. The iceberg had no lights on, so nothing on and you hit that, then this was supposed to be a huge iceberg. Then the failure of the marine architect to whistleblow. If he had made public the fact that the lifeboats were not compliant with the Board of Trade's regulation of amount of 32 lifeboats, but they have reduced it by a further 12, so that there are only 20 lifeboats, there would have been and also the fact that they changed the watertight compartments, which posed a major risk. Now, only thing is they all labored under this misconception that this was unsinkable. They never even dreamt in their wildest dreams that the Titanic would sink. And here on its first voyage, not even completed its voyage, halfway across the Atlantic, it goes down. And the indifference of the crew to the safety of the passengers, not abiding by the established tradition of women and children first, discrimination in selection of passengers because they prefer to save all the affluent people who are going first class, because they are the ones who even if in future even travel on this line on the poor guys are not going to be able to afford to come on this for another trip, and not filling the lifeboats to full capacity. They just let the lifeboats go, most of them half full. So these are the picture of the Titanic sinking is of course a drawing. This is supposed to be the iceberg that it is, but nobody is quite sure. But I think this was taken from the Carpathia was the ship that was closest and went to the rescue. And this was they photographed this. And these are the lifeboats, picture of the lifeboats coming in, which I don't appear to be very full either. So if we look at the ethical issues, corporate goals overriding engineering and technical concern, this is evident in all these. Excellency building, the tectonics, the industrial robot, and the Titanic. Failure to safeguard life and property, again the same to it. Not taking serious laws of and whistleblowing, excellency building and the Titanic. In the case of the robot, there was nobody to whistleblow. Nobody to go out and whistleblow because the guy who did the program did a program that was not correct. And his associate created a bogus checklist which gave wrong results. Conflict of interest, again, excellency building and Titanic, because they wanted to, for example, excellency building, they wanted to make more money by going up further floors rather than safeguarding the life and property. And the Titanic also by forcing the captain to go at maximum speed and finish the crossing in 6 days, when there was a possibility that they would not be able, visibility was almost zero in the night, and they wouldn't see anything that was coming their way. And working outside their competence level, again, the tectonics programmer or the computation specialist doing a programmer's work, and the excellency building engineer not properly qualified civil engineer trying to do a detailed structural design. So that's another one that you can ponder over and figure out what's happening. So when you are answering your B paper, make sure you sit next to somebody who knows what he's writing, and then you think how important is ethics in today's society as you answer the paper. And anyhow, and I mean the bottom line is, I mean, ethics is a right, wrong, but quite often what happens is that everybody likes to take the middle road depending on how convenient it is. So that's it. I've cut short of you.